Welcome to The Explainer. So here's a huge question. How do you actually raise the standard of teaching across an entire region, especially a remote one? Well, today we're digging into a really fascinating report from Gilgit, Baltistan that offers a powerful blueprint for doing exactly that. And the secret sauce? Empowering teachers to lead the change themselves.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the big challenge they were up against. Then we'll check out the blueprint they created. After that, we'll see their method in action, face the on-the-ground reality, and finish up with the big takeaway.
Okay, first things first, let's set the stage. What was the fundamental problem this whole thing was trying to fix?
So, this is the big one, right? The question that educators in Gilgit-Baltistan were trying to answer. We're not just talking about having a few superstar teachers here and there. No, this was about lifting the entire standard for everyone across the whole region. That's a massive undertaking.
So what was their answer? Well, it was a really interesting collaboration between the local school education department and the American Board for Certification of Teacher Excellence. And together, they created something called the Professional Teaching Knowledge Program, or PTK for short. And get this, since March 2022, this PTK program has become the official benchmark for every single teacher in the region. Okay, so having a framework is one thing, right? It's a great start, but the real question is, how do you actually make it happen on the ground, in the classrooms? Well, their answer is pretty smart. They created a totally new kind of leader. And this is where this new role comes in. They called it a CPLIC. That stands for Continuous Professional Learning and Improvement Catalyst. It's a bit of a mouthful, I know, but just think of them as master trainers, or catalysts for change. These were experts who were handpicked through a tough selection process and then trained to go out and drive this whole thing forward in their own local districts.
And check this out. They were organized into these specialist pairs, which is a really smart way to maximize their impact. So you'd get, for example, a chemistry expert like Asghar Ali working right alongside an Urdu language specialist like Nasir Abbas. It's this blend of skills that made sure every single training session had this incredible, diverse range of expertise.
All right, so what did this training actually look like on the ground? I mean, in just 7 months, which is incredibly fast, these teams managed to reach 360 teachers, and that's just in the Hunza district alone. So to really get a feel for how this worked, let's zoom in on one specific, super important module from their workshops. And it's a topic that, every school deals with. How do you get parents and the whole community involved and supportive? And just look at the structure of a typical day. What's so interesting here is that they didn't just stand up and lecture for hours. No, they moved really logically from the big picture stuff, effective communication, and then drilled right down to the nitty-gritty practical tasks, like how to properly record a student's achievement. One of their go-to activities was something they called a gallery walk. And this is cool because it's the total opposite of passive learning. The whole idea was to get teachers up on their feet, moving around, brainstorming in small groups, slapping their ideas down on big chart paper, and then, and this is the key part, learning from what all the other groups came up with. And the CPLIs themselves pointed out just how effective this was. It created this really powerful atmosphere of, mutual learning. It wasn't some expert talking at them. Instead, you had teachers actively giving each other feedback, swapping ideas, and really thinking about different ways to approach a problem.
But here's what's really crucial. These facilitators, the CPLICs, they didn't just stick to a rigid script. Not at all. They were constantly watching, constantly observing the teachers in the room, and then adapting their methods right there, on the fly, to make the session even better.
So case in point, in a later session, they decided to try something completely new. They just went for it. They ditched the gallery walk and replaced it with role-playing exercises. Each group got a real-world scenario to act out and solve together. Pretty bold move.
And guess what? This pivot was a huge success. And it's pretty clear why, right? It took the whole conversation from just theory to actual practice. It gave these teachers real, hands-on experience for navigating those really tough conversations we all know they have to have, like talking to parents when a student is really struggling.
But look, let's be real. Not every session is a home run. And honestly, one of the best things about this report is how upfront it is about the challenges they ran into on the ground.
Let's take a look at one team's experience, for example. On October 12th, they had a session that was just on fire. Super interactive, great questions, everyone was engaged. It was a total home run. But then, just 2 days later, with a different group, it was a whole other story. The venue got moved at the last minute, the energy was low, and the questions just weren't as deep.
But this is the important part, how they reacted. They didn't chalk it up as a failure, not at all. They saw it as a learning opportunity. They adjusted their approach right there in the room, gave some targeted feedback, and worked to get the teachers re-engaged and to lift the conversation back up.
So at the end of the day, after 2 weeks of this intense journey, facilitating, observing classrooms, even teaching model lessons themselves, what was the big takeaway for these catalysts? What did they learn from being on the front lines?
Well, the reflections are really telling. The key insight here is that this whole process wasn't just about training other teachers. It was an incredible learning experience for the CPLICs themselves. They were getting this constant real-world feedback that they could then pour back into the program to make it even better. They basically created a system that learns and improves on its own. It's brilliant.
And that really brings us to the final big idea here. This report from Hunza, it's more than just a local success story. What it really is a powerful blueprint. It shows how you can build a culture of continuous improvement that's led by teachers for teachers. And that's a model that could be a real game changer for schools, well, just about anywhere.